You don't understand me at all, Lily. You're just a failed mother. Amber is so much better than you. Her voice cut into my chest like a knife. I froze at the kitchen doorway, clutching the math test in my hand, my palms soaked. A few seconds later, she threw off her backpack, her hair flying, tears and anger flashing in her eyes, and her silhouette disappeared decisively at the end of the stairs. I stood there, chest hollowed out, the only sound the ticking of the clock and her fading footsteps. At that moment, I realized the bridge was completely broken, and her choice was clear. She chose the gentleness of another woman, a substitute I could never be. I clenched the test in my hand, my fingertips aching, yet all I could do was silently watch her leave. She didn't know that each step she took was paving a lonely road for herself. She didn't know that this so-called freedom would soon bring her real regret. Amber is my ex-husband Rick's wife. She is always confident, gentle, and never critical. She knows when to smile, when to be silent, and how to say a few casual words that make people trust her willingly. She knows how to please others, especially Lily. After Rick and I divorced, Amber became the biggest supporter in Lily's life. She took Lily to get her hair done, buy clothes, take photos, and chatted with her like a friend, listening to her secrets. Lily's social circle is full of photos of them together, smiling brightly, as if I never existed. See, Lily? Now that you're living with Amber, everything's solved, right? Every time Rick called me, he would say this with a fake sense of concern. He spoke with such certainty, as if I had lost all confidence. You should relax a little. Lily is fine now. Stop dwelling on the past. I listened to his voice on the other end and silently hung up. And me? I could only face her cold gaze every day and endure endless accusations in my memories. Lily proudly said she preferred Amber, and the disdain in her tone almost made it impossible for me to breathe. At that moment, I fully understood that she had never truly understood me. She was simply deceived by the apparent ease and indulgence, mistaking it for freedom, mistaking it for love. In the early days after the divorce, I often had sleepless nights. The clock beside my pillow ticked away, one mark at a time, as I stared at the ceiling. If I had known all this, what could I have done? If I hadn't been so stubborn in holding my principles, would everything have been different? But another voice inside told me, I don't believe I'm a bad mother. I never asked her to be perfect, only that she be a child worthy of herself. I still remember the time I forbade her from attending the dance after finding she had hidden alcoholic drinks. Lily yelled at me in frustration, Amber would let me do this. She's my real mom. At that moment, I nearly broke down. Her words were sharper than any scolding. I stood frozen, watching her walk away with her back to me, feeling hollow inside. I realized then that perhaps I had already lost her trust. After that, I decided not to worry about her future, not to feel ashamed of her mistakes. I chose to let go, signing her over to Rick and Amber. At that moment, the sound of the pen scratching the paper felt like a ritual. I officially withdrew from her life. Their life seemed glamorous. Social media was always bright and cheerful, smiles, flowers, trips, family gatherings. But I knew it was all a facade. Behind that perfection, there were cracks, though no one admitted them. 6 months later, my life gradually regained calm. Life without Lily allowed me to rediscover myself. I enrolled in a pottery class, trying things I had always wanted to do but never had the time for. I loved the feeling of clay turning in my hands, warm, soft, and heavy, much like raising a child, except clay wouldn't resist. At work, I earned a promotion through focus and dedication. Friends praised me, saying I looked 10 years younger. I smiled, but inside I knew it was because I no longer spent nights crying. That night, my phone rang. I had just stepped out of the shower, my hair still dripping. Seeing that familiar yet strange name on the screen made my heart tighten. Mom. Her voice was small and trembling, like it had been suppressed for a long time. I couldn't speak immediately, leaning on the sofa, silently listening to her breath. I have something I need to tell you. Her voice was softer than before, fragile like a wounded bird. I stayed calm, waiting for her to continue. I want to come home. Her voice choked, as if driven to the edge. Amber has changed. She's not as kind to me anymore. She doesn't let me spend money freely and forces me to do chores. Dad doesn't take my side. I listened to her complaints, a faint smile forming on my lips, not sarcasm, but a complex mix of sadness and relief. Finally, the once high and mighty, perfect mother began to show cracks. I was wrong, Mom, she continued. I shouldn't have left you. I know you only want me to become better. I understand now you were doing it for me. Her sobs came through the phone, and I could almost imagine her curled up in a corner, tears dropping onto the screen. I didn't respond immediately, just let her speak. Her voice held shame and fear. That sound made me both ache and feel helpless. She said she felt isolated in that household. She said Amber was no longer gentle, becoming increasingly critical, even reprimanding her publicly. She said she felt like an outsider. I thought she really cared about me, but she just wanted me to listen to her. She was performing, she cried. I was really wrong. I listened, heart aching. I knew I couldn't let emotions control me now. When she finished, I spoke calmly. The choice you made, Lily, is your own. You may feel everything has changed, but this is just your current reality. I've been waiting for you to realize this. There was a few seconds of silence, then an angry intake of breath. How can you say that? Aren't you my mother? I said calmly, with a quiet strength she could not ignore, but you abandoned me yourself. You had 2 years to accept your choice, not to expect me to fix everything for you. Silence again, then her sobs, desperate, unlike anything I had ever heard. Before hanging up, I couldn't help but say, Lily, sometimes we have to bear the consequences of our choices, rather than running away. When the call ended, I stared out at the night sky. The rain had stopped, and the clouds were torn open by moonlight. I suddenly felt that everything had finally found its answer. Rick quickly sent a text, accusing me of being cold and immature, saying I was hurting Lily. The phone's light flickered in the dark, casting my face in a pale glow. I stared at the words, fingers hovering over the screen, but didn't reply immediately. Outside, the wind howled against the glass. Inside, the quiet was broken only by the refrigerator's low hum. I imagined Rick sending that message, sitting in Amber's living room, holding his usual black coffee, calm and composed, as if handling a business crisis. He was always like that. Even in a broken marriage, he maintained that false composure. And I, once helpless in the face of such rationality, was no longer. I didn't reply to his text, yet a strange sense of satisfaction filled me. It wasn't revenge, but a feeling of finally breaking free from constraints. I leaned back on the sofa, exhaling. Cold? Perhaps. But if gentleness only leads to being trampled repeatedly, I would rather be cold. A few days later, Amber sent me a message. What you're doing will hurt Lily psychologically. She's never really understood you or seen her own mistakes. Her tone was as usual, gentle, proper, yet laced with an unchallengeable sense of superiority. I could almost see her perfectly styled curls and composed smile. She always played the role of the graceful woman, even when criticizing others. It seemed noble. I stared at the message, fingertips pressing lightly on the screen as if I could punch a hole through it. I replied with a calm smile, "She understands now. She's been wrong all along. She also has the ability to bear the consequences." The moment I sent it, I felt a long-lost calm. I wasn't competing or trying to make anyone yield. I was, for the first time, truly defending my dignity as a mother. Their anger didn't last long. Soon, Lily began reaching out more frequently. At first, they were brief messages. "Mom, how are you today? I miss you. I dreamed of you making breakfast yesterday." I didn't respond to every message immediately. I knew reconciliation wasn't a single embrace, it was a long repair. Sometimes, I would stare at the words for a long time, overwhelmed by emotions. Gradually, she learned not to complain or demand. One night, she sent me a photo, a clay pot she had made herself. Crooked, imperfect, but carefully inscribed with one word, "Mom." At that moment, my eyes welled up. Soon after, she mustered the courage to call. "Mom, I really want to see you." Her voice no longer held pride, only controlled sincerity. I stayed silent for a long moment, then agreed. We met at a cafe near home, the one she loved most as a child. When she pushed open the door, I barely recognized her. She was thin, pale, dressed simply in a gray sweater and jeans, no longer in flashy fashion. She stood nervously before me, like a child who had made a mistake. "Mom," her voice trembled. I watched her for a moment, then handed her a cup of hot chocolate. "You still remember this was your favorite as a child?" I asked. She nodded, tears brimming. "I remember," she choked, "you always blew it first, afraid I'd burn myself." I smiled softly, "Back then, you still let me take care of you." She looked down, fingers gripping the cup. "I'm sorry, Mom," her voice a thin quiver, earnest and real. "I thought I understood myself. I thought I knew what love was. But I was wrong. Amber was only kind because she wanted me to obey her. She never cared about me," she cried. I listened quietly, without interrupting. Tears fell onto her hand, forming tiny, sparkling drops. "I only now realize, you weren't trying to control me. You only wanted me to learn what's right." She sniffled. "I hated you back then. I thought you wanted to ruin my life. Now I know, you just wanted me to grow into a responsible person." Finally, I reached out and gently patted her hand. "People have to hurt themselves before they know which way to go," I said softly. I paused, voice softening, "I don't blame you, Lily." She looked up, tears glimmering. "Then, can I come home?" At that moment, sunlight poured through the cafe door, warm and gentle. I looked at her, heart finally letting down the walls. "Of course," I whispered. "Home has always been here. You just left too abruptly back then." Lily threw herself into my arms, crying like a child. Her tears were a mix of relief, regret, and a long-lost sense of safety. She finally understood, real motherly love isn't indulgence, but guidance, not helping you escape, but forcing you to face life. A few days later, she moved back. The house was filled again with footsteps and laughter. Sometimes, watching her help chop vegetables in the kitchen, I remembered that night when she shouted, "You're not my mom." That memory still stung, but it also reminded me, growth is never gentle. She finally understood, my strictness was love, my coldness protection. And I finally understood that being a mother isn't about being understood, it's about holding the line, so one day the child understands themselves. I sat on the sofa, watching the sunlight pour in. Her laughter from the kitchen was crisp and warm. I realized, some bridges, even if broken, can be rebuilt. And the bridge will be stronger and truer than before.